Okay, so I would like to welcome everyone to the Roundtables. My name is Brianna Reese, and I'm the Student Director of the Roundtables here at Philadelphia University. Today, our host is Professor Dana Perlman. She is the Associate Professor Program Director of Midwifery here at PhillyU. And our panel today will discuss the actual costs of menstruation nationally and globally. And I'll turn it over to you.
So I'm a midwife. That means I'm a primary care provider for women and families, and that the care that I provide is in the context of women's lives, and it's not about illness, but it's about health and healthy decision making and health promotion and disease prevention. And we're there with women when they're pregnant and they give birth, but we're also there across a whole lifetime of care from adolescence through the end of life. Okay. In fact, one of our professors just wrote an article that was published in a national journal about midwifery and hospice care. So, some interesting stuff going on there. The midwifery program is an online program, and so I don't do lectures, so we'll definitely be talking. We do lots of discussion and discussion boards, so I intend to do that. And in fact, there's a type of teaching called Mayudic teaching, which is based on the word for midwifery, that is like the Socratic method, where you ask questions and help people to pull out their own learning through asking questions. And so that's how I'd like to run this.
Hi, I'm Nini Rao. I am the assistant professor of chemistry and math.
Camille Potts, Senior Fashion Merchandising and Management major.
I'm Chloe. I'm a first-year law major, law society, sorry.
I'm Josh Snicker. I'm a professor in the communications program.
My name is Maria Sophie. I'm a third-year student, and I'm the marketing major with minor in laws.
Evan Lane. I'm the director of the Law and Society major.
Morgan Smith. I'm a freshman environmental sustainability major.
So I wanted to say why I chose to do this. So last year, I know we say Mimi ran Let's Bloody Talk 1, and it had a lot of people who were really interested, and it was focused on why is menstruation so taboo? Why don't we talk about it? What's this kind of all about? And really beginning to explore that. And people were so interested that we thought we would do that again. And so this is Let's Bloody Talk 2, and we wanted to really explore what the costs are, both like literal costs, like money, and also what are other costs in terms of social standing and perspective, and costs in terms of culture and education, both in this country and internationally. So that's kind of how I wanted to frame this. And I thought we'd go from the concrete to the more abstract. So what I've handed out is just a list that I was able to pull off on the yearly costs of just the products. This doesn't include like the ibuprofen for cramps. It doesn't include the clothing that may need to be replaced. It doesn't include the gasoline or the bus fare to pick up the stuff. It just is the stuff. So let's talk about that. And I also brought some pictures, because sometimes people haven't even heard about the stuff. And I also thought we could talk about the experience of the walking down the hallway. Is it in your sleeve? Or hiding it in your bra?
It was even for me. I was in in the research lab, and I had a tampon in my pocket, and it wasn't even that time of the month, and I just so happens I always keep one in my pocket in case, and I walked out of the office, and then a couple minutes later somebody pulled me aside and said, by the way, like very quietly, it's a female professor, I think you dropped this. Thank you so much, but I was like, why can't we why do we have to always cover it up? And we always, like, even ever since I started period, I was always being told, oh, when you go to the bathroom, make sure you hide yourself, and then, go to the stall and then do whatever you had to do.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the different costs of these things. So there are all different ways to manage a period. And every period is different, every woman is different, and every period is different. So you have a whole range of things that you can use to manage a period. And so I've got all of these things here. So first, does anyone know what all of this stuff is? Like, have you all seen this? No, right?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
For the guys in the room,
Yeah.
you and me, John, Alvin's our cameraman over there on the
Yeah.
camera. I have no idea what that's like.
Right.
Never. It's like kryptonite. Just,
Right. And my husband, who only has a brother, and who all his cousins were male, was when we first moved in together, he was like, whoa, this is different, and also how much toilet paper are we going through? So it was like a whole new world, and I think that there's the cost of toilet paper too. It's actually on the list. So we'll talk about that later. So some of these things. So let's talk about what they are, and then we can talk about why we might want to use some of them, especially from an environmental perspective, and also from just a personal cost perspective. So that abstract cost to the environment, but also like money in my pocketbook that can go to other things. Okay? So these are actually cloth pads. And since we are in an election year, I would let you know that you can actually buy cloth pads with the surface imaging on them of the two campaigns right now. So those are some cloth pads, and you can see they come with a little bucket and some solution for cleaning them, and a little portable thing. Somebody makes money selling this stuff. So those of you entrepreneurial types, this is a possibility. Okay? So, but it kind of reminds you a little bit, you guys may be all too young, but the cloth diaper thing, yeah, it's kind of similar. Okay? But it comes with a waterproof pouch, so you can still change your pad. Okay? And they come in layers with a wicking and then a moisture barrier so that they don't have an odor, so that they can be used. Tampons coming in all different sizes, right, which is important because you want to make sure that you're using the right size, because otherwise you put yourself at risk for either leaking and ruining your clothes or for not leaking and having toxic shock syndrome. So you have to make sure you choose the correct size, okay, which is like, how do we even know how much we're bleeding to know what the correct size is? And they always give you the amounts in like milliliters. Like, are you kidding me?
It never works.
And how are you even supposed to know that?
And how are you supposed to know that? Right. So these are tampons. These are applicator-less tampons, so there's less waste with them. But then you have to use your finger, and then you have to make sure that there's soap in the bathroom before you use it, and then you have to figure out how you're getting out of the stall, back to the sink when you're done. So it can be tricky, okay?
Because you're not always at home.
Because you're not always at home. Okay? Then these are applicator and applicator-less tampons, which come in both plastic and cardboard. And then there's a whole debate about whether or not they're flushable or compostable. Okay? We're going to go to this last. And then, so here's another one. This is another tampon with an applicator. Then there are different types of period panties that you can get. These are called Thinks, and that's a brand name. And they have a built-in pad, so you can...
Is that the one you have to wash?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing them on the train in New York when I went to school,
Yes.
and we actually talked about it in my anatomy class.
Yeah.
Some of the girls said it was like really gross because you're like sitting in your blood all day, so people have like different opinions on it.
Right, and it depends also, there are different brands. So some of them have that wicking, and so it doesn't feel wet, and some of them don't, and then they kind of feel wet. So the people I know who have actually tried these have been like, oh yeah, this is amazing, and they love them. And a lot of women find that they're more comfortable. There's a term that they use called free bleeding. So that if they don't have something that they're wearing inside against them from a pad, that they're much more comfortable. In fact, there was a marathon runner, I think in the UK, who ran and decided that she was going to not be as comfortable running and not run her best if if she wore a tampon. And so she decided to free bleed during the marathon run, and it was a pretty interesting bit of news coverage that happened with that. And then this is the the theme underwear. So this is Ant Flow, but they also have ones that say Red Room and Shark Week. They have one that's called Count Dracula, but the word isn't count. And so there's all different things that you can get. So they have themes there. And then there's pads, disposable pads, again in all different sizes. And they've just recently started making them in like teen happy pad coverings that are like
Some marketing.
yes, that marketing. It's amazing. And you know what? My daughter gets really annoyed when she was so somebody I know gets really annoyed if I use the really cool covered wrappers instead of the plain yellow ones. She finds that really offensive. Leave her the colored ones. And then this is called a menstrual cup, and they come in all different brands, and they are foldable, and you can wear them, but you can wear them for up to 12 hours, and they're not made of latex. And so they're usable over and over and over again, and they last about 10 years. So if you're comfortable putting in a tampon, this will save you a lot of money.
Just one of them last you 10 years?
One.
Yeah.
What?
One. So if you look, yeah, what? So if you look at this and you look at the cost on the bottom, the other ones are in the ballpark of 45 to 50 on the high end to about 30 on the lower end, to menstrual sponges, which is about 20, to a menstrual cup, which is 3.
Yeah. $3 for 10 years is how.
No, $3 per year, $30 for 10 years.
That sounds like pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, yeah. So the downside is that you have to feel comfortable using it, and you have to figure out there are different cups. One person I know found that it was only comfortable if she wore it inside out. So she had to turn it inside out. The little stick that sticks down, that's like a handle so you can pull it out, was really annoying to her. Other people I know have just trimmed the little stick on the bottom. Okay. So those are just some of the options. So what do you think about those? Is it like weird? Yeah.
It's all very innovative,
No, so they didn't
especially because
They didn't ask the men in the room.
I don't think it's
Speaking,
weird, but
this must be such an inconvenience. I mean, really.
Yeah. And it also depends on your period. You know, some people.
This is assuming that you can successfully change everything, and then the inconvenience comes when in the times where something went wrong. I'm sure all of us have experiences where something went wrong, and then you are in the middle of something, and you have this moment where you're like, I can't go out right now, but at some point I need to walk out and fix my mask. So, and then that's not even in the cost of that. Right?
That's not even in that cost. This is the best case scenario cost. So some of the things that I think are important to consider is first, how do we teach girls growing up that this is normal? How do we normalize this? I just read a story 2 days ago about a woman who was really looking forward to, she had twin girls, and she had really been very honest with them and had raised them and thought she was being very empowering. And when one of the twins got her period, she came out of their bedroom like, come in here right now. And her mom went in and she started sobbing. And she was sobbing because what her period represented to her was not a threshold into empowerment or into womanhood, but it meant this burden. And the lack of equality. And so she had a completely different take on what her period meant. So how can we, as young women, change that dialogue so that the cost of getting your period is not seen as detrimental, but seen as something that is an extraordinary thing that women can do.
If I could just interject, establishing context, just spoke to the young ladies in the panel. What did they experience? Before we get into what could be done better, what did they experience either from their family, friends, school, sex education, whatever,
or friend, or
for whatever source that they think may have been negative or not sensitive. I think that would
or
be,
positive.
or positive, right? Or
too.
positive, whatever it may be.
Yeah, so I'll go. So I remember when I was in 4th grade, we had this meeting and we had to, I never read like the take-home notes and stuff from the teachers, but they gave all the girls take-home notes to get consent from our parents to watch this video. And we didn't know at the time what it was about. So my mom told me, she was like, okay, you're going to go to school tomorrow afternoon and you're going to have to go to a video at the nurse's office with your grade, all of the girls, and you're going to discuss about your period. And at that time, like, my mom never even mentioned it to me. And I was like, okay. Like, I was in 4th grade, I was like, okay, sure. So I remember when we all were in our homeroom classrooms, and they kind of like took all of the girls out, but it was more so like secretive, like as if this was not something that should be talked about. Like, we had to go away in the auditorium, all girls only, a few teachers were able to come, and everyone else, like, I remember like the boys being confused too when we were like, we don't even know what we're doing. It was a quick, probably like half an hour presentation. We were traumatized. I remember leaving that room and I was like, what is going to happen to me? I was like, I don't know what's going to go on. And like, they showed us like tampons and stuff, but like, they never showed us how to use tampons. And that's complicated too when you're, younger. And I remember them talking to us about pads and stuff, but it was just a quick 30-minute presentation and it was never spoken about again. And I went to a public school too, so like even with like sex education, how you brought up, like that was never spoken about. And even like when it was spoken about around the boys and stuff, like we would get embarrassed, and it was just something that was always like very, very hushed, especially in my school. But
it's really interesting how it's so different from a bloody nose.
Yeah, right.
And I had the exact opposite experience when I was in 4th grade. They did all of the girls and all that, but they showed us, this was a long time ago, they showed us a sanitary belt that you could wear and then clip the ends of the pad to it. It would hold the pad in place so you can have an easy pad. But they never told us why we would need one. So I was like, why would you do that? So
yeah.
I'll talk about it next. For me, it was like at school, I don't really, till I moved to the States, I don't really think there was like a concrete like conversation. And I was like about 12 when I moved here, so it had just started, I guess. And like I remember, just telling my mom, and she was like, okay, well here's a pad, and that's it, and put it on, and kind of it goes on, but nothing like really explaining it, like why is this happening, how is it happening, like all this. It's just something that I just have to deal with now. And it was just, again, it was a burden. I was like, I don't know why this is happening, but I guess I'll just, do what I have to do. And it was always a very low-key conversation. I think, I'm very close to my dad, so I feel like dads should be involved as much as moms are. And because when you're young, you don't really realize it when it comes, because it's just, you're trying to get used to it. So if I were to have an accident or something like that, my mom very quietly would have to pull me aside and like tell me what to do or anything like that. It was a very like my dad was not involved at all. And I mean, again, I see why people would find it weird. But I, in my head, was like, well, no, like, these are my parents, and both of them should know what's happening. But it was very, like, mom-daughter kind of thing, and it was just kind of like, well, like, why? And they just would bring up all those questions, and then as I grew older and I just kind of became used to it, that kind of just stopped. And, I don't know, it just became... It was that time of the month and it was not allowed to talk about. That was that. You dealt with it on your own. I know like with my friends, like there was never like really a very strong conversation I remember before I moved. So I was in 5th grade maybe, like I was about to move, you know, to a different country, so I would not see these people again. And I remember like sitting down and like, one of the girls kind of like shared, oh, like I had my period, and then that's when the conversation kind of opened. But then I moved away, so I don't really know how we went from
May
there.
I ask which country?
Greece.
Oh, okay.
So it was very different, and especially in that, I don't want to say that they're very like conservative or like, but with women, especially my parents being Albanian and in Greece, it's very like, there are like rules are set for what women are supposed to do. It's like that housewife mentality and keep your mouth shut and just do how things are supposed to be.
Gendered spheres.
Very, yes.
Gendered spheres, it's called.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, to briefly speak like from the other side, I mean, I think like that both like the segregation, like gender segregation and secrecy reinforces a lot of these issues, right? So this notion that it is secret implies that it is like sort of somehow shameful, that it's only something for women to deal with. So it's not, I think like just like you talking about like, why wouldn't your dad also be part of this like you are also still dealing with your father. So it sort of offloads everything to women, and then it also sort of like tends to like get reinforced into the masculine spheres as well. It's like we can't talk about this, it's untouchable, even though like, why? So and I think that sort of the institutionalization of it at a very young age, I mean we're talking about 4th grade, sort of reinforces like some of the policing in the workplace. I mean I think like that those types of segregation that are sort of like bound up both in this logic of like I would say secrecy and shame, like then sort of get reinforced over time. The sort of management always also then sort of gets offloaded onto the women basically to not make men feel uncomfortable by sort of having to ever acknowledge this basic human bodily reality. And I think that also I think is taken up in interesting ways in some of the branding that maybe we could talk about later, but also like the branding and technology around this and ways to sort of commercialize those fears and sort of being able to talk about it without talking about it, I find very interesting.
I run into men in the tampon like hiking aisle before, and then they were really, you look at them, they were completely confused. And you know, staring at this wall of products that we know exactly which one we like, or how we use it, we grab it, we run, we go, we don't even think about it. And I had people who literally tap on me on the shoulder and said, I need, like, they can't even know what it's called. I said, oh, you need tampons. And they were just over there. And then they were like, which one do I get? I was like, I don't know. You have to ask your wife before that one. But it's just the whole idea that they don't even walk in through that aisle if they could avoid it, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I feel it's like very, like even avoiding the word, like saying tampon, like just puts people on the edge and they freak out and they're like, oh God, like what is it? How? It throws people off because it's not something that they deal with, and then it's just so uncomfortable because they're not familiar with it. But I feel like as sex ed or even just education period, it's not the same. The sex ed at the district that I went in would be female students on their own and male students on their own. No, have everybody in the same room so everybody knows what's happening. Because what if that boy is a single dad one day? Or what if, you know, it's his gay dad and, you know, there's 2 male partners. Like, what do you do then? And you have a daughter if you don't know from an early age exactly how it goes.
Or just a dad. I plead guilty to what you just said, and I never thought of it. That's advertising to the roundtable. That was really a good moment because I never thought of that before. And if my daughter was playing a sport and fell down and she was bleeding, I'd be running and taking care of her. I'd be the one there first, knocking people down to get to her. But somehow that is removed. And I never understood it from your point of view, and it's wonderful. Say, depended on your dad was always there for you, was always there. And somebody's not there for you. You know, for one, this very important thing, suddenly he's cut out of the whole equation and thrown to the side.
Right.
And I never thought how the impact would be on the daughter. And that was really, thank you for that. I think that was really an epiphany. Thank you.
Did anybody have an experience where their period was celebrated? Where it was marked as something cool?
When I was in elementary school, I felt like being a girl, just like the topic of being a girl was like a really provocative discussion. And so when it came to like being and like getting your period, it was like, oh my God, like did you get your period yet? Or like, when are you gonna get it? Oh my God, you haven't had it yet? Or like, and then like once it did happen, my friends and I would just kind of like high-five each other. That's just like the kind of friends I had who were all very supportive of like even like the gory details.
Yeah.
We would even now like be very open in discussing like our periods and like other like, I don't know, I guess societally gross stuff that we do. But we're very loud about it. Like we're not at all like hushed or like, can I have a
Maybe it's not
tampon?
gross.
Yeah, it's not. That's what we realized. We're like across the room from each other. And we're like, do you have a tampon? Is it irregular? Yes, never mind. From elementary school, it's just been like the kind of people I've been surrounded by and made it like a very comfortable discussion.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. Like when I was in middle school, like we would always talk about it. Like I'm just really open when it comes to stuff like this. It's normal. Like why is it so gross? Like if I'm in Kmart and like my friend is sitting there, I'll be like, you got a tampon? Like I'm not gonna be. No, that's find that is so stupid. Like why do I have to hide something that is like a part of my system? Like it's normal. So I just think everyone should talk about it. Like, so what?
There's a beautiful children's book that one of my students shared with me that has some, there's a little bit that's inaccurate, so I'm not sharing the title, but the idea is great, which is a book about this woman's moon time. And her mother and her grandmother are in the book. I can't remember if her father's in the book, so I should go and look about that. And talk to her about how to care for herself, how to make herself feel better if she's crampy, how to change a pad or a tampon, even goes into if she needs a bath, if she's feeling crampy, that there are herbs that she can put in the bath that might make her feel better. She calls her grandmother to talk with her grandmother about this. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. Imagine if that was something that we read with our kids. Just like we read about, like, so-and-so wants to grow up and be a firefighter. This person wants to do this. This person fell and needed some surgery. This person gets her period. And it's just, it would be, I think, so normalizing to do that. That said, I'm a midwife and I talk about everything, and my daughter has simply said to me, you are just too comfortable with everything, do not talk to me.
I actually grew up with a book like that. It's the American Girl. Yeah, I had that one. I was just going to say that. Yeah, I have that. I grew up with it. My mom bought it for me, and she's like, here, this would be interesting. It's about going through puberty and everything, and it talks about tampons and pads and how to insert them and how to use them and how to, make yourself feel better and things like that. And after I was done using it, we would pass it down to like a family friend or my cousin, so that they can know too. So I think it's really important that you have that information starting out there.
Is your father involved at all in the educational process?
Not really, but like my dad is a physician, so he like kind of knows what's going on. So like, I was pretty open with him, like asking about, so how does this work? Like, maybe he'd go out and get his little charts and stuff. But like, if I had like, I normally would talk to it about with my mom, but it's like pretty open. I wasn't scared to talk to him about it.
When I was littler, I didn't want to talk to my dad about it. When I was probably 16 or 17, then my dad and I were able to talk. I think I had moved through that horrible middle school or early adolescence, like everybody was looking at me thing, and then had gone to a much more self-confident place, and then I was finally able to talk to him.
I don't know if this is something to like bring up, but also in the media you don't see it as much talked about. Anything about periods came out, it was like a show, and like again it was that daughter, and that was that, or like see his friend's daughter or something like that. But like that was the first time that I had seen something like that. And if you look at ads and whatnot, or not, I mean that blue liquid has just it's ridiculous now at this point. It's so you don't see it in media as much talked about or normalized in that sense, because as I feel like, especially my brother is 13, so I feel like that generation also, like that's all they know, the internet, and that's how everything is run now. So it's not as visible. People are still like very hushed about it, even though there is so much outlets to share about it. So
there was an interview during the Olympics this summer with a Chinese swimmer.
Yep.
Someone asked her, and she just very matter-of-factly said, "Yeah, I think I'm tired. I got my period." It's like
It was not only shocking in American social media, it was shocking in the Chinese social media as well. It was like,
how is she swimming?
that actually is one of the questions, because tampon use in Asia is very, very rare. It's not something they like. I knew they existed when I was in China, but it was not something that it was like bestseller. And one of my friend who moved back to Taiwan, and one of the things she was emailing me about was like, it's kind of, my mom was kind of embarrassed that she has to drive me all over the city to get tampons, because she hates using pads. And I was like, I can see that. I really can see that. So that is a question. How do you swim when you have your period? And to normal people, they were like,
Why the shock? So she did so. Yeah, but there was this amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's what
I
really.
think it was for forthrightness.
Exactly.
But why is it even an issue?
Right. Why is it an issue?
It's like every woman has it every month, from puberty until they're older. Why is it there's a lot of women out there. It's not like something uncommon. It's happening a lot. So why is it something that is?
I also feel it has to do a lot with the double standard. Men get a pat in the back, with a lot of things, and I feel like there's that double standard with periods. You have to hide that. With sex, if a guy goes out and just has sex, he gets a high five. A girl, she's shamed for it a lot of the time. A lot of girls going into college, they get pepper spray, to make sure to keep bad people away from them, where boys get condoms. So it's not, it is. Everybody has a condom in the wallet, where girls are told to carry pepper spray and to be careful to not do anything that would possibly make them impure. And the period falls under that category, that somehow you're impure in some way, but yet everybody has it, and that's how it works within the body, and people are just not comfortable with that.
It's an interesting idea. It's just the conceptualization of the female body as normal and usual and not other. I have an ongoing joke in our teaching lab. We have a mannequin that's a chest to learn how to listen to heart and lung sounds. And it's a man. And all I could think was, why would you use a male referent when the thing that's hard to learn is to listen to the right middle lobe, where you have to displace a breast? And more women seek medical care than men. So why is this model male? And the guy from the company was like, so it's an interesting question.
Because the female body is sexualized.
Yeah. And also
if it
other.
had breasts, the model sounded woo,
That's a good disclaimer.
Go ahead.
Like, it'd
this
be
is not real.
Or no, we're not trying to have this discussion, but this is a woman's body. These are breasts. There have to be some sort of disclaimers before we even went into how to determine the heartbeat or
Yeah. And so imagine if bodies were just normal. I think we view women's bodies as somehow other, different, disease. I think that's part of why I became a midwife. is that pregnancy is viewed as like a medical disease that results in a procedure that is done to women. That procedure is called delivery. What if we change that completely and say pregnancy is just a developmental state, just like puberty? It's something that happens to a lot of women, and then you give birth. It's sort of normal, like breathing. It's what happens at the end of pregnancy. And it's not a procedure. It's a physiologic process. That's a really different way of thinking about women's bodies. So what if we take that way of thinking about women's bodies and put that into just, there are different kinds of bodies in the world, and they're normal.
How do you see that happening? I mean, I 100% agree. I'm curious what sort of initiatives you think would be useful. I think your point about the media has been tremendously important. I'm a communications person, so I mean, right. I'm obviously biased, but I mean, and I think that something even more interesting to me, it's not even just, of course, like you sort of expect it from sort of like normalize, dominant. I mean, like again, the trope of like the guy being terrified about having to like even go down like the tampon aisle is so old, but still repeated. But I think, but even more so, I think there are, for example, like a lot of contemporary female comedians who are very frank about sex. But when it comes to talking about menstruation, that's still, so even people that are pushing boundaries on some of those normalized areas, this sort of gets re-described. So like I'm 100% on board with that goal. How do you, I mean, maybe to throw to the group, how do you sort of see movement towards that happening? And I would love to talk about like the branding and sort of like the reappropriation of some of this at some point, but I also want to.
I think reappropriation is actually exactly what it is. And I think that it's, I mean, if you look at where we are now versus where we were 100 years ago, it's very different. But if you also go back like to Elizabethan time, people were probably pretty straightforward about this. And so I think it's cultural mores. I think there's and I think different cultures have different ideas about this and different ideas about cleanliness and purity. I don't know if there's purity, but I think that there's that. And I think that if we are able to change that conversation, then I think it's to all tied as we start to accept diversity in so many different ways. I think that this is very much tied to that discussion. Gendered speech is right up there with racism, classism, and all of those other power dynamics, and it affects different people. And so as that kind of stuff progresses, I think that this can be reimagined.
I think we're getting close to the end, but you sent out the Megyn Kelly thing. I think we should talk about that as well, how not only is it used for impurity and so forth, but it's also used as a reason to label women as irrational.
Irrational, weak, inconsistent, all of those things.
One of the comments I read that I presented during the last part one of the slide talk is that I don't remember exactly who said it, but they suggested that Hillary is a viable female candidate because she has gone through menopause, therefore she does not have that fluctuation of mood swings, which when I read it, I wanted to punch whoever wrote it in the face. But it is that I think the bigger issue is that we do not recognize women's health as a complete, package. And we have physiological functions that result in imbalance in hormone, and that may manifest in different ways that depending on the person. And we view that as a defect rather than a physiological change. Until we as a society can recognize women's health as a important social foundation in the sense that we function half of society, I think there's never going to be a real change to view women as equal as men. So
I also think there are many things that are cyclical. We have circadian rhythms. The fact that people need sleep, although in this culture it is often seen as a weakness, but like everybody has times where they need to sleep. People have times where they're more energetic and less energetic. They have times in the day when they can focus more and then focus less. And there's seasonal things. And I think that the whole idea of cyclicalness is somehow made pathological for women when it's not so pathological in other ways. And I think being able to see that cyclicalness as normal is really interesting. I mean, it's just, I even think about that when I think about menopause. People talk about the whole menopause transition, it's going to be horrible. The overwhelming majority of women have no symptoms when they go through menopause. You'd never know that from our media. And the overwhelming majority of women may have some changes because of their period, but they function just fine. They go to work, they go to school, they do all sorts of stuff, they manage budgets, they do everything all month long, all year long. And so I think there's got to be a way of viewing that cyclical changes and fluctuation as part of a larger fluctuating whole, just like we view circadian rhythms or anything else that's cyclical.
I think we're going to have a Let's Talk 3.
We can talk about the global impact.
Because we talk about global impact, what we can do to make this happen, and the effect of media and communications.
I'd be very curious to hear about like people's thoughts on like all these sort of technological mandate, like all the apps that are now sort of also about sort of like self-regulation and tracking and sort of networking. So like the technological aspect is also.
And I think we should continue this talk. Even I mean the title itself is catchy. Let's bloody talk. But it's not just about periods. It's about women as a whole. Like a lot of our needs and our are being neglected. And I think that one of the other things I read when I did the Let's Bloody Talk Part 1 was there is no systematic study of women's health, the impact of women's health at all. There was like they understood knowledge that there is a it's important and whatnot, but there's not that many study that's devoted into menstruation or like specifically. It just seems to be pushed away as in it's bodily function that happens, even though it's an important one. Without it, we would not have the reproductive process at all. So
It's kind of important.
yeah, it's kind of
No, I totally agree with you. And everything that you were saying before too, I think that it kind of adds on to that burden that we were talking about before, that perceived burden that women have to endure, especially in the workplace as well. I think that they use this, employers will use like, oh well, women are going to have that time of the month every month and they're going to have the mood swings and stuff. Well, what about the men? I mean, I know a lot of men who have mood swings every day. Not a week, every day. So
I know in my American politics class in high school, this conversation kind of like came about, women and being, that inequality that exists. A lot of women go into the workforce without their engagement rate because if they see that they're not engaged, employers will hire them because that means if you're not engaged, that means you're not getting married soon, and that means you're not having kids soon. So that puts them in like, okay, I'll hire you because I know you are going to spend some time here, or sometimes it's totally opposite. They're like, I will not hire you because what if you do get pregnant and then you're not here for 6 months?
I was being told specifically once, don't get pregnant, I need you.
Yeah.
and I don't understand why that should be held against women either in the workplace, which
I think we have a workplace that does not accommodate that, and therefore it is a really big, huge burden, but it shouldn't be seen as a women's burden. It should be seen as a burden on our whole productivity, and that's the problem.
the entire village doesn't raise a child, then everything just falls apart. Because if the mother is not able to be there, or if the father is not able to be present in this child's life, then that child would very easily fall apart, and then that could lead to the rest of us having to pay up in taxes and supporting that kid or however it may be.
Well, it was a big discussion during the Affordable Care Act debate was, why should we include maternity care? One of the congressmen actually said, I'm never going to take maternity care. Why should this be a universally covered benefit? So that's a conversation that's coming from a very different place, and I think that it's important to begin to discuss, like, okay, so how does this become, how do we start to see this as not a dichotomy, but as a shared responsibility for productivity for our culture?
It's really interesting when my cousin who lives in Germany, when she gave birth to her son, I went to visit her, and her husband was telling me very excitedly that she's going to take 3 months, or 6 months until for her paid leave, and then it will be my turn. And then he was so excited because he was like, I get to spend time with my son, I get to influence him with which soccer team that he's going to play. I'm not making this one up.
In Sweden, they have great, their leave there is I think it's a year and a half or something like that per parent or total. It's ridiculous, but because they understand the fact that it takes a village to raise a child, so they each stay home and it's paid.
Yeah, and he was so excited, and I never heard of that before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then I was like, wow. And my cousin said, I get 6 months where I could focus on rebuilding my career after my maternity leave. And I thought that was a brilliant idea. And yet in here, we can't even get, 3 months?
3 months.
6 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I have seen women go back to work 2 weeks after a cesarean.
Wow. Because somebody has to pay those bills.
Because they had no paid leave, and that would be a full percent of the time she could afford to take off.
And they save up vacation days and everything. And then I have a cousin who, now she's a stay-at-home mom because financially she has 2 daughters, so she has to be at home because her husband does bring in a bigger income than she did. But it was a sacrifice.
This question, I thought it was a law that women and men in the U.S. they had a certain amount of leave with pay.
If your employee, it's called the Family and Medical Leave Act, and if your company has more than 50 employees, they're not allowed to legally fire you from your job. You can take up to 12 weeks unpaid leave. But if you work at a company with fewer than 50 employees, you're not covered. So one of the women I'm thinking of worked at a small mom and pop hoagie shop. They didn't have 50 employees, and she worked part-time, and she had no paid time off. So there was just a bill in Philadelphia looking for accrued sick time, that you must be able to at least accrue sick time for your work.
I know somebody who actually was just started a job and did not accrue anything, and she was given that before any of the paid leave could kick in, because she just started less than a year or something like that, and then she was about to give birth. It was an HR nightmare. It was just, I feel so bad.
Which I see that as completely related to the stuff that we talked to at the beginning, for those girls who are unable to afford period supplies and then miss school every single month because they don't have enough, which is also related to the fact that we have mothers who can't afford diapers in this country, right, who are rationing changing their children because they don't have enough diapers. So it's a very real issue that has an unequal impact on our economic development, on education, and on access to work.
So Dana, if you can wrap up, because we're nearing our end.
There you go. So there are real costs to having a period, and that I hope that each of you will take both some concrete information home to share with other people about ways to save some money and to care for yourself creatively, whether it's the surface printing pads or a Diva cup. And I also hope that we will meet again to discuss some additional implications, because we didn't even get to the global implications.
Keep the conversation flowing. It's one of the pun intended, and it's the best ways to engage the dialogue and then have people be aware of this issue that is bigger than any one of them could imagine. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for engaging.